80% of the time, you'll feel like you're failing. 15% of the time, you'll feel like you're treading water. 4% of the time, you'll feel like it's over. 1% of the time, you'll feel like you're winning. Why?
Yeah, this is not scientific, by the way. This is something that I would just share with my wife.
The Journal of Bro Science.
Yeah, exactly. This is just bro science, but based off 20 years as an entrepreneur, that's about how I felt. 80% of the time, I felt like I was just behind. I was constantly behind, but that 1% of it felt like I was winning. And then after a few years, about 5 or 6 years into my career as an entrepreneur, I realized the secret is just to find as many of these 1% and keep stacking them.
Yep.
Because I could dwell on the 80% of the time where I feel behind, or the freaking whatever it was, 5-10% that I feel like, everything's falling apart around me, like the 4% that everything's falling apart around me. Or I could just focus on these 1%ers and realize that, okay, that's a win. Let's move on to the next battle in the war, Inc. 500 recognition, Entrepreneur Magazine's top 200 franchises. Those recognitions will come if you stack the 1%ers. Yep. You don't need 100% wins. And I think it's probably impossible to have 100% wins all the time. But as any kind of high performer, and I believe this is probably true for professional sports, for people who are actors and celebrities, they feel like they're just behind, not doing it. Someone else got the part, and then boom, they land a part that gets them the Oscar. That's a 1%er. Stack more of those, and that's what worked for me.
I put this in a newsletter the other week, so I want to teach you about it. I think it's kind of related to what we're talking about here. I've been thinking about how to achieve a realistic path to enlightenment. As much as moving to a cave in the woods and spending a decade in silent retreat might be great for your spirit, it's not going to be doable by pretty much anyone. If you've meditated enough, you know that you accumulate momentum in mindfulness, kind of like a swell moving underwater. After enough time, there is a force and a power to your ability to drop into the present moment, and sometimes even little waves of genuine calm insight break above the surface. But if you're anything like me, it doesn't result in an extended, self-perpetuating enlightenment. It doesn't even really work on its own, where your mindfulness sneaks up on you and you're in the present moment without realizing it. More so, consistent meditation and a focus on mindfulness strengthens the thinking muscle that you use to wrangle your mind to actually exist in the now. You learn to punctuate your day with instances where your mind finally settles into the moment, and then it's gone. But then you can get it back later in the day, and as far as I can tell, this is the realistic path to enlightenment. You are never going to become a fully blissed out in perpetual non-dual astral realm synchronicity, bro. But you can string together a few moments of peace so that at least for a few times each day, your mind rests where your feet are. I always used to think that this was a failure. If I can achieve mindfulness but then lose it, that's still not persistent enlightenment, so I failed. Instead, I think it's smart to reframe the goal. If you can just have your mind and your feet in the same location 5 or 10 or 20 times a day, that's a good start. And then maybe you can do it 25 or 30 times. That seems both attainable and really useful. And that seems to be what you were doing there, right? I understand that self-doubt and uncertainty and fear of the future is just going to riddle my experience as I try and do something that's difficult. That was in the business world, but it could be in personal development. It could be in trying to reshape the dynamic of your family or whatever it is that you're trying to do. And presuming that you're going to be able to do this and it's just like an ambient peace, equanimous, beautiful, like membrane that you get to skate along, that's not going to happen. But what you can do is try and string together a series of these wins.
Yeah, what you're just there, especially for performers, right? People that are high speed, tightly wound, and have high expectations of themselves. We are wired to get satisfaction, to get self-worth through production, which in many ways I'm jealous of regular people who can just watch TV and not feel lazy and sluggish. Dude, I could watch TV, like a show with my son. Like we watched Pulp Fiction the other day, and I probably stacked like 15, 20 wins that day. But after watching Pulp Fiction, it's somewhat of a long movie. I was like, fuck, man, this was not productive. Like, I have conditioned myself, or maybe better said this way, I've been wired through a series of abuse and trauma and neglect to feel that I am only a worthy human when I am producing. And if I am producing, I'm worthy. And so when I'm relaxing, if I'm sick, if I'm watching TV, I'm not.
Guilt.
And therefore we have guilt, and therefore we don't allow ourselves to enjoy for even 15 seconds that win, because I must go on and produce again, because that's the only way I'm a worthy human. The work I did with Kevin Downing, my therapist, was 10 and a half, 11 years ago. And then as I started so healing helped me, because I realized my self-worth is not directly attached to production, right? So it always goes back to healing, because again, you're given trauma either accidentally because, the family gives you a nickname that you attach some kind of weird meaning to, and that you carry that for decades into your future, or true trauma happened, like you were raped, molested, abused, whatever. However the trauma shows up, healing is necessary. Otherwise, your self-worth is going to be attached to something, either attached to you being attached to someone, or you always being the martyr, or production, in my case, our case, especially when you're hard charger. But as I healed, I realized my self-worth is not attached to that one bit. And so I can catch the conversation in my head, because literally as Andrew and I were watching Pulp Fiction, and I'm like, man, this movie's going along pretty long here. I don't feel that productive. I'm like, dude, I'm having the greatest time with my son right now. Immediately I can catch that negative thought that's still, because here's the deal. I think you've been around long enough to know when, Microsoft, it would have your Microsoft based computer would have a virus. Sometimes it wouldn't be able to necessarily fix or get rid of the virus. It would quarantine the virus. Remember that? It would quarantine the virus on your hard drive.
Funny.
So the virus, I think, gets quarantined in us. It doesn't go away. It's quarantined. And so while I know my self-worth now is not attached to production, it will still rear its ugly head.
But that's the realistic path to enlightenment again, right?
It's awareness.
Yeah. It's look, your day is going to be filled with reflections that upon reflection, you're going to wish you didn't have.
Yeah.
It's not the job of you to seamlessly, perfectly thread the needle through this minefield of potential thought failures. Your job is to be able to notice them when they arise. Like, the perfect meditation session is not the one where your mind never gets distracted. It's when you notice when it does.
Exactly.
And this is the same. You sit down and you notice this little habit arise, like fucking Type A Bedros just ambiently appears. Hey, you could be working. Hey, there's email answer. Hey, you could be being more productive. Okay, I see that. And we release and allow that to go, right? Like
And that is the beauty of transcending from an animal to human being, connecting with consciousness, because you become the observer in your life, right? And you know this. And when you become the observer, you can now see things almost from outside eyes. And I could see from outside eyes like, oh, okay, that person said something, it rubbed me the wrong way, I'm feeling a certain way, human animal wants to react, human being is going to take a moment and go, did he really mean it that way? Or is this just triggering something old in me that's been quarantined?
Yeah.
And when we can have outside eyes and become the observer in our own life versus reacting to everything as though it's factual, we begin to get the utmost amount of control, like true control of our life, of our status, of our well-being, of our health, of our relationships. And I think you're either going to have some false self-control, as we talked about in the beginning, where you string some weird things together just to meet a narrative that you've built in your mind to give you some sense of false control, or you can have true control by being the observer and realizing, hey, I'm looking to react. I didn't sleep well last night, and this guy said something that triggered something in my head from many years ago, and so I'm not going to respond to this guy right now. Being the observer is necessary, and to become the observer, you have to transcend. Healing, transcendence, that is the ultimate purpose we have to achieve in life. And I think most are too distracted by social media and all content overload to even pause to begin to listen to the conversation in their head to see where it's going.
I have a lot of faith that most people realize that there's something up here. I'm built for more. I'm built for more, and I could become more, and I really, really have the tools to be able to do it. And the satisfaction that I get, I would actually go as far as the satisfaction of noticing when I nearly go awry and then bring myself back in is about on par with reflecting and realizing that I never went awry in the first place, because both of those things have been arrived at by conscious effort, right? Being able to sit down and do a podcast and at no point have even had a sense of time because I've just been dialed on the person that I'm sat opposite is perfect. But being distracted during and realizing, oh, fuck, we've got to make sure that the flight's for that thing, and then going, nope, and coming back in is also a win. right? It's impossible to lose. The only time that you lose is when you allow that thing to continue to take you away.
Right.
Even if it does, and then you bring yourself back in and it's a strategic lesson. It's the John Kavanaugh thing, right? You either win or you learn.
Right. Exactly.
You've got a quote that I absolutely adore. Your haters are out there holding their breath, waiting for you to fail. Make sure they suffocate.
Yeah.
I try, or I imagine, I fantasize about beating people at their game because I know the game that I could win at too. Let's say that there's someone who has a particular dislike for me, some sort of disdain, and I know that they really care about money. And I think, well, you know, I could dedicate the next 12 months to like earning more than 10 times your net worth. And I know that that would make them feel bad. And first off, it's a stupid thing to do to let somebody else determine your game.
Right.
But what Alex taught me was, even if you win, you still lose because they got you to change your game.
Your game changed.
And they didn't even know that you were playing.
Yeah.
Where you do something to try and prove a point to somebody that didn't even know that you were doing it because of them. You consider it a kind of win because you did win, but you hijacked your own goal to prove somebody else that you can do it better than them. So even if you beat them, they still beat you.
Yeah.